All right, who here watches The Financial Diet? It's host Chelsea has a reoccurring segment called Asked and Answered. And this is featuring, let me see here, a content creator. You probably know her, maybe you don't. I always forget the name of her. Broke Millennial, that's what it is. Erin. So Erin and Chelsea Financial Diet, Erin Broke Millennial. And they have an Asked and Answered show that I do like to watch. And one of the questions was, should I leave my husband for being a Trump voter? And I want to watch this segment with you, have the conversation, and add in my 2 cents to what I think about this bubble and this advice that the ladies give.
After 5 years of marriage and one wonderful child, we were about to start trying for a second. I found out that my husband voted for Trump. We literally used to go to Obama rallies together in college, and he was marching with me in January 2017. But I guess him getting into fitness over the past few years took him down some very questionable YouTube rabbit holes, and now we're here. We basically got into a huge blowout fight about the Department of Education. I'm a teacher, and he let it slip that he voted for Trump this time because life was too expensive under Biden. I also suspect that there were some dubious DEI concerns in there, but I'm not even going to bother figuring it out. He's a software engineer who earns about 4 times what I do. And like I said, I'm a teacher. We don't have a prenup. I feel like I'm married to a stranger, and the finances of divorce are terrifying for me to consider. I don't have a ton, but I do have my own emergency fund and a 403b. Any advice?
Okay, stop. What do we think? What are our initial thoughts around it? What do we think about the situation? What were some initial thoughts that came into your mind as you were listening to her read that? Because I had a lot of thoughts, but I just want to preface this, especially if you're new to my channel, that I think there's a difference between marrying somebody and marrying your high compatibility partner. I think most people settle in relationships like they do in friendships or jobs. I think most people don't actually know what they want out of a marriage, and they don't actually know how to talk about shared values. So what do you guys think? You know, what were your initial impressions? Chat says, did she talk to him? But that's wild. How did you not know? Or why did he switch up? Chat says, if your partner is a stranger, that's a bigger problem than just the voting thing. Chat says they don't keep up with each other. Chat says, is it worth talking to him? Chat says, it sounds like they don't communicate as much as they could have in order to see this coming. Chat says she needs to start asking him questions. Chat says, initially, I thought this lady did not ask enough questions when they were dating. But to be honest, I don't know about breaking up the family at this point. Chat says, blaming fitness is questionable. Chat says it's hard to have a conversation without getting angry. And Chat says, I can't imagine not discussing voting with a partner, committing to conclusions together. Yeah. Ooh, Chat says, I think they're at the beginning of different paths in life. Ooh. Okay. Chat says that's a jump, to be honest, like a jump to divorce. I don't know the context of the fight, but I think there needs to be more communication. I think divorce is a natural part of life. People change. There isn't a rise in relationships falling apart. There's just access to it now. Oh, I don't know what do you mean by that? There isn't a rise in relationships falling apart. There's just access to it now. I don't know what you mean by that. Because statistically, women were trapped in marriages they couldn't get out of until divorce was literally made easier and more legal, and women being able to have bank accounts and their own means of, capital played into divorce rates, if that's what you mean. But if you mean people entrapped in relationships, so I don't know if you mean the literal divorce rate or you just mean like people falling out of love in a relationship. Chat says people used to be gate kept from getting a divorce from the legal point, but they were also gate kept for economically. Okay, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. Now there's access and freedom and support for women to leave even if they're poor. Okay, yeah. Okay. So right away, I had almost exactly the same thoughts you did, where I was like, how did this happen? It couldn't have come out of nowhere. How often were you talking? How is this possible? And I say this as somebody who's married to somebody where we talk every day, all day about we do not stop talking, and we share. What did you watch today? Our YouTube algorithms are completely different. When I go on the tablet, so they have a tablet, when I go on my partner's tablet and I see what they've been watching, I'm like, geez, your algorithm is so different than mine. And then, yes, we have some overlap, obviously, but and we do this on purpose. Both of us curate our algorithms on purpose. Mine is mostly kind of work focused. Like I have a very work focused algorithm because I'm looking for content to react to. But we are always sharing. We share so many thoughts that like I have to be like, I have to pee. You got to let me go. You got to let me go to the bathroom. And they're like, wait, but listen to this last thought. And then I'm with somebody who like we have problems going to sleep at night because we just want to stay up and talk all night. Okay. So I'm just like, I'm in a very particular kind of talking relationship, right? Chat says, do you ever consider it's the autism that will make you go so deep, so in depth in conversations? Yeah. I mean, obviously it is the autism, but it's even more than that. It's our interest. We have interests. We have shared interests. I also love the gym bubble. I love gym bubbles. Gym bubbles can be very conservative, very Trump voting. There is a whole bubble of boys on the internet who love to hit the gym and talk about MAGA. So I'm assuming that's the bubble her husband went down. I'm assuming he was on the Brandon Shaw, Brendan Shaw, whatever. He was in that bubble, like the, Andrew Tate, Jason-y bubbles. I don't know if he was so much on the lean beef patty side, which tends to be neutral, or the Jesse James West side that tends to be neutral. He was probably more just in the, there's a bubble on the internet that's very like MAGA. So, and on top of that, he's a tech dude, right? So on top of that, he's tech and he's gym. It's like a breeding ground for MAGA. The issue is, why did it feel like such a surprise? And also, why weren't they voting the same? Why weren't they on the same page of who we're voting for? Now, where did this change come about? When she dated him and then got with him, what was his stances on politics? What was his values? Apparently they seemed to be on the same page, but something changed. Now, here's the thing. In my marriage, we do consider a deep value change to be divorce worthy, because at some point we can't afford to look at each other like strangers. We can't emotionally afford it. We can't mentally health afford it. It's not about finances. We don't care about finances. To be honest with you, I'm not afraid of starting over again. And that's just my mindset. My partner's not afraid of starting over again. For a lot of people, that's really scary. I've done it so many times in my life that it feels so normal to me to start over again. I'm honestly not that afraid of it. I'm more worried about being trapped in a marriage I don't like. I would rather start again with $0 in my account than stay in a marriage because of money. And that's only for Brittany. That's only for me. But that also probably plays into my philosophical belief that nothing is mine and I'm not attached to anything. Like, people are always like, oh my God, your YouTube videos, do you save them? No. I don't care if everything gets deleted right now. I don't know. I'm not attached to it. I'm not attached to my stuff. I'm not attached to things. I have nostalgia for stuff. I have like photo albums and stuff, but like if they all burn in a fire, like that's sad. But I mean, that's life. Like, what are you going to do? What am I going to ruin my life because some things like, no. So like everyone's different. I've also had therapy and I've gone through a deconstruction journey and I'm still doing it every day. So I think for me, it's more about observing that I'm on a journey of life. Like sometimes I feel like my life doesn't even belong to me. It belongs to this like biological experience that I'm having and I'm just here to enjoy the ride. So it's a big part of like how you interact with life. So these are our initial thoughts. Damn, we're like minutes into this video and these are just our initial thoughts. Let's see how the ladies tackle the conversation.
How many emergency funds to call back to last season?
This is why, as I said, every woman should have 26 secret bank accounts.
So I'm going to let you start on this one because I think we're going to agree and slightly disagree.
I say this, I'm going to keep this vague. As someone who has lost many loved ones, more than I would even like to say, to, let's just say, Facebook brainworms that have led one down the alt-right pipeline, the far-right pipeline. Trust me that I know that this is many layered grief, right? Because you are not only grieving the dynamic that you used to have with this person, you are grieving the person that they used to be, the values that you thought that they shared. And in many cases, many of us who have loved ones who have gone down this rabbit hole know that you reach a certain point when you no longer even really live in a shared reality,
Okay, that's very true. I have a MAGA family. Part of my family's MAGA. It's very weird, but it is what it is. I grew up with it my whole life. There is a part of it that's sad, but also a part of it like, hey, what are you going to do? Okay. Chat says, did she just say that women should have secret bank accounts? I don't know if Chelsea literally means secret, but Chelsea does kind of subscribe to the belief system that women should always be ready and prepared for the inevitable or possible divorce or death of a partner. And I think being prepared is good. I think Chelsea and I differ on our beliefs around relationships, even though Chelsea's been partnered for like 14 years. I think I believe I do things differently in my relationship, but that's okay. Everyone's different in their relationships. So that's really what the conversation is going to be about today. Which category of person are you in? What does being prepared look like? Like my partner and I would not have sacrificed how good our life was before we met each other, our single life, unless we thought we were engaging with somebody who was genuinely so similar to us that we're going to grow old together. Because unlike other people, my partner and I agree, should one of us become Trump voters, we're allowed to take that person to the doctor. If I wake up tomorrow and say, baby, listen, baby, I think I'm going to vote for Team Orange. I think, look at him. So orange, so shiny. My partner would be like, we need to go get you checked by a doctor. Versus in a normie relationship where no one talks about anything, your partner all of a sudden can say they're a Trump voter and you can just sit there and be devastated instead of being like actually concerned for their mental health. It would be, I'm married into an anti-Trump family. My partner's very anti-Trump, very anti-fascist. Like if my partner tomorrow woke up and was like, hey, I think I love fascism now, I'd be like, oh, I think we have to go to the doctor. So do you get what I'm saying? It wouldn't just be devastating. It would be a sign of dementia. But you see in other people's relationships, they're not thinking dementia. They're thinking man became misogynist. I'm like, oh, see, in my relationship, dementia. And that's the difference. That's the key difference in these relationships. And that's why I think it's so interesting when people get married, because a part of me is like, I can't believe you're getting married to somebody that could become a fascist or that could be anti-homophobic or be homophobic. Sorry, not anti-homophobic, be homophobic or be racist in that. Like, you know what I mean? That's the difference here. So, okay.
There are so many things that become taboo subjects that can't be agreed upon, that are, that start a fight that, I will frequently go on the QAnon casualties subreddit where people talk about, and it's not just QAnons, people who've kind of gone down the MAGA or far right pipeline. And people talk all the time about it feeling, and this is for people who have also had loved ones suffer from dementia, that it feels almost like akin to dementia in some ways, because a lot of these things that you're talking about, like they become so extreme and so decoupled from reality and so aggressive that you don't even feel like you can have a rational conversation with this person who in many cases, these people used to be, as you say, quite open-minded, quite progressive, quite liberal, quite, the opposite.
I disagree that any progressive person all of a sudden became a Trump voter. You know what I relate this to? And I really have been on this vegan journey as a philosophical perspective. When people say like, you can't be vegan and be not vegan again, they don't mean the diet. I really get it. Like, I kind of really get it when they say you can't just go from being like not racist to racist. I kind of get it. Like, I get what they're saying. Once you've truly embodied a belief that like people shouldn't be judged on their skin color, you can't just all of a sudden turn around and be like, actually, I think the 13%, I think we should talk about the 13%. Do you know what I mean? Like, it would be very difficult. You would have to have enough racism already embodied in your belief to allow you to even consider, you know what I mean, these dog whistles for racism. And I think that's what we're not actually talking about, is a lot of liberals are racist. A lot of liberals are homophobic. A lot of liberals are misogynistic. So they're primed and ready to actually be those things. So when you deconstruct that and you become more progressive, it's an embodied experience, much like veganism. Once you have a relationship that animals are not here for our labor and they actually are their own sacred being that deserves the dignity we would show to another human being, then you can't go back and all of a sudden be like, actually, slavery kind of had a point. Once you're like pretty anti-slavery, like for real, you can't just be like, actually, I think owning people kind of based. Right? Now, again, I'm still plant-based. I'm not yet vegan philosophically. I'm on that journey. But there is no Britney that exists in which I tell my partner, hey, what if we owned people? Are we down for that? Do you want to own some people? Like, no, we're not going to own people. But do you know what I'm saying? There are people on the planet that own people and that are open to owning people and that engage in slavery. And that's because they already had that sort of baked into their belief system or their sense of entitlement, right? Okay.
I also think that, in my life, when I look around, I'm a coastal elite. As I said, I'm a lib, further left.
Oh, wait a second. TMM in the chat says Caffeine Jedi is a great YouTuber who made videos about having to leave her husband after dabbling with alternative medicine. Led him to joining QAnon? Whoa, I will look that up for another day. That's crazy. Thank you, TMM, for the recommendation.
Than many probably, but either way, I'm a progressive woman who works in a progressive space and generally exists in a progressive social environment. I would say about probably over 50% of my friends now and loved ones have lost many people to a similar. I mean, look at the numbers, right? The numbers don't lie. This man won the popular vote this time. So I think that it's, and I should also say, the people in my life who have lost loved ones to this, they are diverse in every way you can imagine. These are my LGBT friends. These are non-white. These are non-American in many cases. I have a lot of French people whose parents have gone down far-right pipelines and are obsessed with Trump from France. talk about loser energy. He doesn't even, you don't even go to the school.
here.
Exactly. So this is a problem. I think that if we think that this is just, I think a lot of people tend to think of the sort of MAGA caricature as like a middle-aged white man with a beer belly in northern Florida who drives trucks with American flags on the back of them and, you know, says like, get her done and stuff. Like, and I think that we're really deluding ourselves / are in a very insulated social and economic and educational bubble if we think that that's what MAGA looks like now, because it doesn't. And generally speaking, if you don't know anyone that this has happened to, or don't have a close relative or, you know, someone of that level, generally speaking, what that means about you is that you're affluent, is that you're educated, and the rest.
Okay, wait. Chad says, that's what I'm saying. Like, how does Trump have stance in other countries? I met Croatians that are pro-Trump. And I was like, it's because the United States, guys, is a global superpower. We impact everybody's life. So other countries have Trump stands because they think Trump is going to help bolster their economy through, like, you know, his policy and stuff. I met Croatian Trumpers. It was weird. I was like, oh, okay. They were like, we love Ben Shapiro. We XYZ. I was just like, okay.
Rest of the people around you are, because those are the two big indicators now. You're more likely to be liberal now if you're more educated, more affluent, and concentrated in urban areas. Those are kind of the rules. So I want to say that I think that the choice of what to do with people in your life that go down this route is a very nuanced one. And I think there are many factors at play in deciding what your decision is as a result of this. The proximity you feel you can keep, etc. In a previous episode, when a man was...
Also, I would just like to point out that if my partner and I come to each other and says, hey, I'm deeply worried about you, and I don't know how you came to these conclusions, that we would be so good faith, we would trust one another. If you're married to somebody who is defensive and refuses to engage in any possibility that you were right about their mental health, then one, you married the wrong person, and two, you don't have a safe marriage. You cannot have a safe union if you do not trust the person you were sleeping next to. You have to trust that person like you trust yourself. And if you don't, you shouldn't marry them. If you do not trust your partner the way you trust yourself, you should not do life with them. And if you do not trust yourself, you should learn to trust yourself before you get married. Okay, we want preventative care here. But I think that's a very big issue that happens in a lot of marriages. A lot of people get very married very fast. They fall in love very fast and they don't even know who that person is yet, but they feel like they do. It's not the time you spent with that person. It's the quality of the time you've spent with them. Right? Where you learn them, you learn their values, you see them in social situations. You know, I got married after a year, but we really got to know each other. We were older and incredibly intentional about our dating, which is different. And I say this as somebody who dated throughout her 20s, who knew none of her partners were made for her. I would question my partners. I say, I know we live together. We've never mixed money. We've never shared bank accounts. We don't have the same jobs. And I say, I don't trust you. I am distrustful of you. And I would like you to be somebody I can trust before I marry you. And they never got there. Okay? So I, for the first time in my life, dated somebody who I not only trusted the way I trust myself, but we have shared values and we're so high compatibility, it feels like magic. That's obviously the person I'm going to do life with, right? RL, thank you so much for the super chat, says the term own is so interesting. Own would imply an extension of oneself. Nobody owns anything. So owning a conscious being, even pets, doesn't exist. Yeah, it is kind of interesting. I feel like another way to think about it is responsibility for. Like, I don't own Indiana. I'm just I have responsibility towards Indiana, or that's my cat, or for those who don't know, hello, new people, or my child. I don't own my child, but I'm responsible for my child. And I also don't have a child if you're new to my channel. Anyways, Chad says, who you marry is literally the most important thing, which Chelsea just made a new podcast about. But since Chelsea's a finance channel, it's always from the perspective of money. And I really think it's, for me, always going to come from the perspective of philosophical love. The wisdom of love and like connectivity and like the consciousness, loving the consciousness, right? Chad says, how was dating for you going through that process? Well, it depends on what stage of life you mean. Do you mean the dating I was doing as like a teenager until 30? Or do you mean the dating that I was doing that was courting? So very intentional about who I was dating. When I was intentional about who I was dating, I was so intentional because I had really done the work with myself, my job, my career, my compromises, my values, who I was, things I would not tolerate past a first date, right? Like there were dates I went on where I was like, nope, you're not my partner. And they'd be like, what? You've only talked to me for 30 minutes. And I was like, no, I can tell. It's the language. When people talk to you, they tell you who they are. If I'm on a date with somebody and they're like, I just think people are right on both sides, date's over. If they're just like, yeah, well, I think like something like I'm fiscally conservative but socially liberal, date's over. I like trans people, but sometimes I think like they push it on children, date's over. There are just things people say that I'm like, date's over. And people be like, wait, you didn't give me a chance. Date's over. I don't really like Trump as a person, but I think he might be good for the country. Date's over. Date is over. Chat says, does vegan philosophy bubble consider pets subjugated to the human so that it's better to not have pets? Yes. Some vegans do think it's wrong to own pets or have pets or care for pets, and some vegans don't. Just depends on the vegan.
Hiding the fact that he lost his job and got into $60,000 of high interest credit card debt. And
hold on, I have to rewind that because I kind of lost track of where we were. Chat says, how did you get that discernment? Years and years and years of deconstruction, introspection, reading books. I've read thousands of books. I've traveled multiple times on my own solo. I've dated lots of people. I've hopped in lots of bubbles. I've been in different cultural bubbles. I've really lived a life. I lived a life of collecting data. And I'm in the second stage of that as well, of course. But until I hit 30, I was honestly a hot effing mess, bros. Until I hit 30 years old, I was a mess. And I was messy because I didn't know who I was. And once I figured out who I was at the foundational core, life just got so much easier and healthier and better. So don't worry that like you're too old, or don't worry it's too late. It's not too late. It's just where you are in the journey. So keep gathering the data and keep asking yourself, like, who really am I? One of the best one of the best meditative practices I've engaged in personally is I imagine myself isolated from the world, but not in a running away way, in a literal way. Like, who would Britney be if the world didn't tell her constantly who to be? Like, what do I really care about? Do I care about gender? Do I care about fatness? Do I care about any of these things that everyone has always told me I have to care about? Do I need to moralize these things? Do I care? And I realized, like, yeah, I don't care about these things. Like, everyone makes me think that I should care, but I just don't care. I don't care if the government pays for your student loans. I don't care if we house everybody. Like, I don't care about any of these things. I think, sure, why not? Like, I don't, people want me to have attachment to things they have attachment to, but you should figure out what you actually have attachment to. Like, you should figure out what you actually have attachment to. Chat says, break, is it okay to link you interesting video? I don't let people link videos in my chat unless it's mods. So you can suggest a video and I might check it out, but no guarantees.
Vision is as a result of this, the proximity you feel you can keep, etc. In a previous episode, when a man was hiding the fact that he lost his job.
Oh, hold on, chat. Language difference here. You said I just came into chat. Do you not care about housing the homeless, or is this just out of context? No. Sorry. I'm talking to conservative. So when I say I don't care about housing people or paying their student loans, I mean, I think we should do it. Ooh, language differences. I mean, we should do it. I'm talking like I'm a progressive. So the person I would be talking to would be conservative. So the conservative would say, don't you think it's unfair that we're paying for their houses? And I would say, I don't care. House them. That's what I mean. So we should house the homeless and unhoused. We should give people education. We should pay off their student loans. I don't mind if we do those things. That's what I mean. Remember, I am a progressive. So anybody I am arguing with will be a conservative, right?
Got into $60,000 of high interest credit card debt, and I believe was probably pushed out of that job for quite sketchy reasons based on the information we were given. I was unequivocally like, I would personally not stay with this person. I don't think you can. I think it's such a violation of trust. In this instance, I think both for financial and personal reasons, as you rightly say, divorce could be financially ruinous for you and could also, in the meantime, really upend your life in a lot of really tragic ways. I think that it is not wise as a country or as an individual to automatically say that anyone who voted for Trump for any reason should be dead to you. And also in the case of someone you have a child with, they literally can't be. They will be a co-parent for you for the rest of your life. So you're not getting rid of this person, even if you divorce them. You still have to coexist with them. They will still be 50% of your child's rearing and education. Ideally, we all know dads don't show up 50% of the time, but in theory is 50% of this, and someone you will need to coexist with. My personal advice, financially aside, would be try to drill down as much as you possibly can on, you said YouTube rabbit holes. What are we talking about? You said voted for Trump for economic reasons. Let's research on that, mama. Like, are we talking conspiracy theories, or are we talking, my cost of living got out of control, so I just wanted to get the current administration out of office and didn't think Kamala would be helpful? Like, I think we need to really drill down. I think we need to decide what are our boundaries around, like, do we need to go to counseling? Do we need to, like, I think there's a lot of steps you can take, but I don't think for both personal, but also very purely financial and logistical reasons that I would necessarily automatically hit the eject button and launch yourself into what is likely to.
There's also a high probability that this person but they have to be open-minded to it. They would have to really be open to the fact that they could be wrong. And it's not like once you voted for Trump, you're ruined. Like, lots of people vote for people they regret. I mean, I voted for McCain and Sarah Palin when I was like my first presidential election right out of high school. Okay, we all have regrets. Okay, we all have regrets. So I would say that if this person is willing to grow and deconstruct and educate themselves, it's not a lost cause. The question is he willing to do that? Or is he actually going to double down and be like, women are such bitches. They take all my money. Women are such hoes. They take all my children away from me. I can't see my kids. I love Nazis. I don't know what the song is from Kanye. I'm making a joke at Kanye's expense. My bad. Don't quote me on that, okay? I'm quoting Kanye. The point is that, like, it's like the husband going to pull a Kanye and be like, someone took my kids. I can't see my kids. Like, is that what happened? You know what I mean? This is where you got to sit down and really know the person you married. But let's be real. You don't know the person you married. A lot of people don't know the people they're dating. I refuse to engage in conversations with people that say something like Chelsea's newest podcast is actually about this thing. Like, oh, who you marry is the most important thing ever. And this woman goes, all relationships have their problems. Speak for yourself. I don't like this saying when people say like, that's a girl, I have full volume in my kitchen and share the wall with my neighbor. Well, RIP to your neighbor, girl. But like, I don't like when people say things like all relationships have their problems. Who? Not my relationship, girl. What do you mean by What do you mean by problem? What do you mean by relationship? What does that mean? What do you mean we all, nah. Okay. Every relationship has two individuals in which separately they could be going through problems, and those problems could help or hinder the relationship in some capacity. And that's why we go to counseling, or that's why we problem solve together. But I don't like this idea that like, ooh, everyone has problems. Everybody has problems, but not every marriage has problems. Every person has problems. Not every marriage has problems. In the same way, like, I don't know what that means.
To be a very contested divorce, because also keep in mind, like, I mean, unless he's gone completely off the Richter scale, which is possible, and that's something you really need to look into, because trust me, every day on the QAnon casualty subreddit is a woman whose husband has gone down at the craziest possible rabbit hole and has guns in the house. So trust me that there's a big range, right? There's a huge range of what this could look like. But if he's a relatively normal person who made a very ill-advised choice for what he thought was economic reasons, if you up and leave him tomorrow, that's devastating for him. And he's probably not going to understand it. And he's probably not going to be able to rationalize it, which is not a good ingredient for an amicable, easy, inexpensive divorce.
So in other words, if the wife feels, I'm going to translate, if the wife feels blindsided by her husband voting for Trump and feels like he's a stranger, he's also going to feel blindsided and like he married a stranger if she up and leaves him. In other words, because they did not communicate in a way that was transparent and they weren't on the same page leading into the election, now she feels like she married a stranger and he's going to feel like he married a stranger. And it's going to be confusing and both are going to feel betrayed. The question is, how in the world did he vote for someone you didn't know? How did this man vote for Trump and you didn't see it coming? Because no way. See, this tells me you are not talking to your partner. No way leading up into one of the most contentious elections of our time, one of the most serious elections of our time, did you not understand who your husband was voting for? So how were you blindsided? I'm not victim blaming. I'm asking a serious question. How in the world did you not know? Chad says, I think as long as all parties are respectful about it, people can vote for whoever they want to. If you vote for a rapist, you don't get to sleep next to me at night. Period.
Also worth keeping in mind.
I think it would also further entrench his viewpoints
Yes.
about both women and liberals and, whatever else. The thing that scares me the most, so I concur. The thing that scares me the most for you is, yes, which version of the rabbit hole is it? And are we going down I want a trad wife, I want, a very traditional dynamic in my marriage, I want you to quit your job and just be a wife and mother? Now, I'm saying that not to diminish anybody who works full-time as a mom or, at home, who has left the traditional workforce. That is not my point. My point is, if that's not you, never has been you, you've always been very honest about it, you already have a child, you've remained in the workforce, it's important to you, you love your career, and all of a sudden your spouse is pushing to isolate you out of that and to make sure that...
Chad says, if you knowingly vote for a rapist, the truth is we probably all voted for likely rapist Biden. Okay, I've never heard that Biden was a rapist, but I've never voted for Joe Biden, unless you count me voting for Joe Biden because I voted for Barack Obama when I was a liberal, okay? But is there like some talk about Biden being a rapist? Like, I've never heard that. Okay, and I have issues with Biden's policy because he did nothing to save the Palestinians who are currently being genocided. Okay, but like, I never voted for Biden, for the record. Okay. Maiden says, I think that most not enlightened people, relationships are hard because of ego plays such a major role. True. This is why romantic relations are hard for me, at least, but I also haven't married. I think the ego is that's why it has to be a team effort though, huh? Like, if your ego is more important than your marriage, you're going to lose that marriage. Chad says, Brittany, I didn't know how to reject or disagree with ideas or people without demonizing them. Leave it to a Taurus to be able to ground nuance and make it tangible social currency. Girl, amen. I love that. Thank you. Chad says, the way I treat my partner, I treat researching local election candidates as a group project and collaboration. I can't even imagine not being on the same page. Yeah, it's like, how are we not talking about this? How are we not having this conversation? Like, how are we as a team not working as a team? But that, going to what Maiden just said, the ego. This man was in his ego, and this woman was in her ignorance. See, the greatest sin of ignorance, right, is it doesn't allow you to take responsibility for your life. I didn't know. I was blindsided. I didn't know he voted for Trump. Yeah. Why? It's one thing for him to trick you, and it's one thing for you to not pay attention. So which one is it? You know what I mean? Which one is it?
That you are not earning your own living, which actually puts you in a position of complete dependence on him. That's a red flag. The bigger question is, yes, what kind of versions of rabbit holes, but also can you be honest with him about how this whole thing made you feel?
Oh, Chet says, yeah, he has a discussion about past incidents. Biden? Ugh, gross. I'll have to look into that. I didn't know. RL Super Chat says, if you voted for a rapist, you don't get to sleep next to me. Oh God, stand on business, Brittany. Thank you so much for the Super Chat. And look, like, I'm very serious about this, especially as a victim of assault myself. Like, something I really see in my MAGA family is like, we don't talk about it. And they don't believe he assaulted these women, even though he talked about it. But more than that, they're very much like, you play with fire, you're going to get burned kind of people. To them, they often will victim blame. So for them, they're like, why did these women put themselves in that position? Like, what position did you put yourself in? It's a very difficult group of people to be around because they want to protect victims, but they don't know how to. And that's the dilemma, is like, we are giving you tools to protect victims, but you don't want to implement it, because then you'd have to stop talking to a lot of people in your life, right? And that's the problem, is like, I know meeting family where they're at and doing your open with boundaries is important. And this is why, again, I'm always open to my inner circle. I love my inner circle. I'm always open to my family and friends, but I definitely put down really hard boundaries, especially moving as I get older, because they aren't changing and I am. And I need them to understand that, like, your stagnation has nothing to do with me. But if you look at me and think, how does Brittany change? How does she grow so much? And you want to grow, I'm here for that. I will never move somebody away who wants to grow. But I do know the difference between when people want to grow and when people pretend to want to grow. And people who are pretending to want to grow, they're going to waste your time. So you got to figure out, like, are these people actually trying to grow, or are they just pretending they want to grow? And that's difficult. And make sure when you're with somebody, you grow at the same pace, or you keep each other growing if one's growing faster, because, like, you can grow apart. It is very common to grow apart if you're not growing together. Again, you're a team or you're not a team. This is why I don't believe in secret to-go bags or secret bank accounts or secret anything. No secrets from the teammates, but the teammates all have to be transparent. And then we have to really work on us being successful as a team. You know? Oh, girl.
You're telling us about how it made you feel, and it made you feel like you were ready to invoke the word divorce, which is, that's huge. Like, that's a real fast leap, which also makes me feel like there's some other stuff going on.
Quite possibly.
And are you safe enough and comfortable enough, like emotionally, physically, practically, to have that conversation with him? His reaction to it can also be telling. I very much agree with counseling. I do think that it's worth getting a third party in there to have some conversations about, it's okay to disagree politically. It's okay to be married to somebody that doesn't vote in complete alignment with you all the time. But the question is, particularly with someone this level of polarizing, what was their real reason? And
there is a high probability that they were having problems in the marriage leading up to this. For sure. Right? That's why when she says it came out of nowhere, I feel like I married a stranger. Nothing ever comes out of nowhere. But the question is, it's very easy for all of us. Like, hindsight is 2020 for a reason. Like, hindsight requires you to live through the mistake so you can look back at it. But when you're in it, you're probably blind to it. But I bet if she, in a year or two, when she looks back at this, she's gonna be like, oh, the signs were all there. I just wasn't paying attention. Maybe at dinner one day, he just goes, man, these females, am I right? And she goes, ha. Ignores it. He called him a female. That's kind of funny. Okay. But like, doesn't think about what it means, the implication. Who did he hear that from? Why is he using that word? Right. Maybe they're out, and about, and he was just like, man, it kind of sucks being a man and having to pay for every meal, instead of thinking like, yeah, why do men pay for every meal? And men, by the way, who complain about having to pay for dates aren't men who are saying, hey, we shouldn't have to pay for dates. They're men who are saying, I want to be worshiped for paying for dinner. It's like, I think people, and I did this, I 100% did this in my dating life. I didn't pay attention to the red flags because I thought, well, maybe they just don't mean it the way that they're saying it. Maybe they mean it in a different way, but they don't. I'd like to believe they do, but they often don't. Now, some language can be confused, like the person who came into my chat just now and thought I was saying that we shouldn't house people when I was actually saying, no, we should house people. It's like, sure, maybe that happens, but not when people are sitting there being like, I think Trump has some good points. I don't know in what world you think Trump is economically sound or in any way ethically sound when it comes to marginalized communities. So any person who's even at this point willing to entertain it is either so fucking ignorant that they are not worth dating because you can't date someone that's stupid, or they are educated on Trump and they're just as shitty of a person as he is, with peace and love.
Like, the economy felt bad. Is that like the real reason, or is that we think that's a socially acceptable reason to give you this answer? You flagged kind of DEI. That raises a lot of questions. Also, if he's okay with the DOE being completely dismantled and you're a teacher, like, you need to have some real serious conversations about that as well.
Exactly. How do you date a teacher? Unless the teacher also wants the Department of Education dismantled. So if you're dating a teacher who's a Republican, they're like, fuck the DOE. Okay. But if she is not one of those teachers, then how is she dating somebody who wants to see her job not only threatened, but wants to see the standard of education go down? How did you marry somebody that's not on the same page with you in terms of education?
Well, again, my husband's a teacher. I feel very strongly about the idea of the DOE.
And by the way, this is very helpful for preventative work. So we're not like pointing the finger at this woman. We're just saying, how did we even get here? Not this woman, but any of us. When you're on a date, ask people these questions. Ask about your job. Ask about the way you exist in the world. I am part-time, like an erotic artist. I just did the most beautiful photo shoot. Oh, gorgeous photo shoot, nude photo shoot on OF. That obviously came up on conversation when I was courting my now partner. Do you have a problem with it? Are you sex negative? Are you anti-adult content? Are you in any way shameful of the body? How do you feel about it? Do you understand that I will be doing this until I'm 90? How do you feel about this? Like, these are very important questions to ask, because a lot of men will date a lot of AMAB people will date a lot of AFAB people and assume that when they're dating them, they'll eventually stop doing the work. Yeah, not Britney girl. Okay, not me. And so that's the question, right? Do you know who you're dating? Are you dating somebody who thinks once I marry them, they'll change? Or, hey, once I marry you, I thought you'd quit your job. These are all very important conversations to have, because there's a lot of assuming. There's a lot of assuming happening.
DOE being dismantled, because people also don't understand federally what that is doing for our country and how states already do have a ton of rights around curriculum and public education. I don't have time for that rabbit hole. But
I will say, not just in my own life, but in many of the lives of people I know who've had loved ones go down this rabbit hole, many of them are teachers and are now pro DOE being abolished.
Yeah, it's upsetting.
If you don't experience this in your life, people really underestimate the prevalence.
Okay, Chet says, I just want to know how soon one should drop that they have an OF. I understand wanting to see how they react ASAP, but this may not be a first date conversation depending on the vibe. Are you dating for courtship? Or are you dating for casual? If you're dating for funsies, they don't have to know anything about you. If you're dating for courtship and marriage and you want to find your high compatibility partner, I don't know. For me, our first date was 8 hours and it was every single reason you would break up with someone. Finances, how much money were in our bank accounts, our goals for careers, kids, religion, any illnesses, diseases we were working on, any issues that would come up later in the marriage. We were very serious about marriage. We were also a little older. So for us, we were so serious that like either we were going to continue dating or it was over. But if you're having casual dating experiences, then like, yeah, you go out for coffee, you have a good time, you see them for a second date. But that's different than saying like, hey, I'm looking for my person. Are you my person? Because my person's going to have, for Brittany, my person's going to have that conversation on a first date. Maybe you won't want a person who has that conversation on a first date, right? But I'm not sad if the dating stops. I'm annoyed if I've dated the wrong person for X amount of time. Girl, I lived with the wrong partners. I'm not doing that again, right? Like I am either looking for my partner or I'm not. But that's, you have to decide if that's what you're doing. So first ask yourself, why are you dating? What's your goal? And who are you as a person? You get to be a person who can find your high compatibility partner by taking your time. Maybe you want to date for 3 to 5 years. Everyone's different. I'm very much like, is it you or not? Let's go.
The sort of the way that it doesn't discriminate, people from all stripes can get sucked down these rabbit holes. I mean, and it's not new, right? Like people look at like the number of immigrants or descendants of immigrants who voted for Trump. That phenomenon is not new. It's not unique. Like, in fact, across the world, globally, some of the groups that report the highest level of anti-immigrant sentiment are immigrants, are former immigrants and the children of immigrants. Like, and there are many socioeconomic and social reasons for this. Like, I think we need to understand that this is a
Oh, and by the way, here's how you would do it. You'd say, so tell me, what are your interests? What are your hobbies? And they'd be like, oh, I like D&D or I like football. And you'd be like, oh my God, great. And they're like, what about you? And I'm like, okay, well, I pretty sex positive. So I dabble in a lot of like nudist communities, or oh, I'm very sex positive. Like I love erotic art. Or like if it's not a hobby and it's a job and they say, what do you do for work? You're like, oh, well, I work by day being a teacher and by night content creator. I make OF content, or I make nude art content, or oh, I actually submitted my work to the Seattle Erotic Arts Festival. That's a festival I've actually been to. It's really great. The point is like you keep it casual. I'm very casual with it because it's not that big of a deal to me. What am I telling you? Like Satan's like secrets? Like it depends on the bubble you're in. It's like people that ask about like, hey, are you queer? Yeah. You know, I'm just very happy to share the things I'm happy about. So I think it's like that kind of energy you go into a first date with, like, you know, hey, just so you know, I recently got diagnosed autistic, pretty stoked about it actually. And it answered a lot of questions for me. How do you feel about dating an autistic partner? And they'd be like, oh, I never imagined I would date somebody who's autistic. What does that mean for a marriage? And I was like, man, it could mean a lot of things. Like sometimes I have food sensitivities or sound sensitivities, or sometimes, you know, XYZ happens, but you know, it's who knows really? Like here's the way that it impacts me on day to day. What are your concerns? And then they'd say, oh, well, I'm really concerned that if I did an autistic partner, maybe that means our kids will be autistic. And it's like, hey, that's a great question. It seems to be biological. So yeah, there is a high chance our kids could be autistic. Is that okay with you? How do you feel about having autistic children? And then they'd be like, I don't think I want to have autistic kids. And be like, okay, well, I think this date might be over. It doesn't have to be the scary conversation for it to be a serious one. It doesn't have to be said in like a tone of like, you know, do you want to have kids? Are you autistic? What if my kids are autistic? It's like, it doesn't have to be like that. It can just be a conversation that's like, hey, what do you feel about how do you feel about autism? What do you think about it? And it's like, okay, what do you think about being gay? What do you think about the fact that I've had like more threesomes than I've had ice cream? Hey, does it matter how many partners I've had? Does it matter how many genders I've been with? You know what I mean? It's like there are so many ways to just have casual conversations about topics that are and do feel taboo. But it's like, you know, if you're happy with it and you're comfortable, I think what happens is that maybe we're not comfortable already. And so we're afraid to come out or talk to people. I know, but when I was coming out of the closet initially, it was really scary to tell people I was gay, even women, right? So when you're really comfortable with it and it's really something that's a part of your life and you're not just coping, you're actually just like, yeah, this is my life. What do you think about it? You good or no? Like, then it just becomes something that's so normal to you. You know, like, hey, just so you know, it's like religious people. They're like, hey, I'm Muslim, or hey, I'm Catholic. Is that okay? What do you think about that? You know, eventually it just has to be something you're comfortable with yourself. So you're comfortable having that conversation with people, right? And I think if you're going to do life with somebody, they should really know you and be okay with the you that is you. And even though there are always new things I learn about my partner every day, I feel like I understand the foundation of my partner. I could really understand my partner's consciousness. And then I get to live the rest of my life learning more about them and learning when they learn new things about themselves, they get to tell me and I get to learn new things about them, right? So, okay, I'm glad Chet's saying that modeling that was helpful. Yeah, I really think dating is exciting if you go in with the understanding why you're there. I think it's really difficult when you don't know why you're there. And I think that just can make it harder, right? The why.
Problem that we have to coexist with on a much deeper level than just an increasing number of the population is just dead to us.
Yeah, because that's not effective or helpful. Like I also think it's important to have people in your life who think differently than you do and that you are able to then also preferably have rational reasoned conversations with. But
Discord said, I almost gave up on being an erotic nude artist because I thought no man would want me. How silly of me, frankly, following my dream. Never avoid doing something out of the fear of being single. For sure. You know? Chaz says, how do you end things with someone because they're a terrible kisser? Well, first of all, I strongly believe you should teach your partners how to do things. And as long as they're open, that's good. But like, I am horrible at kissing initially. I ask well, you can't ask because my partner's not a public person, but I was horrible at kissing initially. I'm always bad at kissing people for the first time. Terrible at it. And it takes me a long time. I think it's a transition thing of learning their mouth and their face and their style. I've kissed so many people over the years and not one person I've met kisses the same. Every single person I've dated is so different. You want to talk about facial structures? I once knew I wasn't meant to be with this girl because when we kissed, our noses perfectly aligned to suffocate us. We couldn't kiss each other without it basically choking us. And I was like, this isn't it. You know? Chad says, how do you end something with someone in general? It feels so intimidating. Well, whether it's a husband you've married who's a Trump voter or someone more casual, it's always hard. All breakups are awkward. All breakups are hard. People get defensive. They get upset. And it's just a part of it. It is truly a part of it. You know, it sucks. I've never even casually broken up with somebody and did not feel a little sad. It's not always bad, but it's always sad. You know, it's always a bummer to be like, hey, you're really great, but you're not for me. That can be really hard for people. You know, I think it takes a level of emotional maturity to do it better and better each time. But also, I'm nervous every time I do it.
I know quite a few people who voted for Trump that I'm also able to sit down and have like, hey, I'm genuinely curious on this particular policy or what made you make that decision, and have had like actual reasoned, rational conversations that leaves me with some information as well about why people feel a way that maybe I don't. Again, everybody lives in a bubble. I know it's easy for us to be like, we live in New York, we're in a bubble, but also everybody's bubbled in their own way. And
everybody is bubbled. Don't I say this all the time? Isn't it nice to hear it from somebody else other than me? Everyone is bubble. We all live in our bubbles. Here's the difference. Everyone I know who voted for Trump or likes Trump, I can sit down and have a conversation with them, but every reason they gives uneducated, badly researched, misogynistic, and inherently bigoted. Even the nicest Trump voters in my life are doing it because it's rooted in a lack of deconstruction. So sure, I learned why they voted for Trump. And what I learned is why they made a decision that I think was ill-informed. But also, you know, you still get to decide what to do after that. Engage with them or not engage with them. Neighbor to neighbor, everyone is dignified and humanized. Politician to politician, that's where we got to be critical of people in power. But like, yeah, always be kind to your neighbor, be kind to your family. Open with boundaries. Open with boundaries, guys.
And it is important to have exposure that's not just the internet, that's like actual real life conversations with real people.
I will caveat that and say we are affluent heterosexual white women. So for us to be across from a Trump voter is less existentially threatening. And like, for example, if I'm a trans person, I in no way would expect to sit down across from someone who voted to push.
This is what I like about Chelsea is that she does check her privilege pretty often and reminds people like she is straight. She's what I call my hetero podcast. When I watch Chelsea, I'm like, man, she's straight, bro. Chelsea is when I'm honest about my queer and gender journey, I don't feel like a woman the way Chelsea's a woman to me. And I don't feel like a person who's with an AMAB person the way that Chelsea's with an AMAB person. Like, we are not living in the same reality. Our relationships are totally different. I just love how straight she is because it's so different than my lived experience. And her binary like womanness is so different. But I think she's really good at checking her privilege. So that's good.
Me out of existence and be like, tell me more, you know?
I'm also not saying like go out on the street and be like, hey, you have a red hat, let's have a conversation. I'm saying if you have people in your life maybe who you already are going to be in a room with and feel safe enough to have a reasoned conversation with, like, but I've been at a Thanksgiving table or two where I've had an opportunity to have a conversation with someone is what I'm saying.
Totally. And I just want to acknowledge that in many cases, matters of political difference are very much rising to the level of not being able to be in contact with people. And that's totally valid.
But that also brings us full circle back to the beginning of this question. I think where we're saying, you know, we're not carte blanche telling you, leave them. Because, again, we don't have all of the information and we don't know what version of this he's gone down. Like, are you still safe at home? How's your child? How do you feel he's going to be as a dad? Do you think that this is going to really influence how he parents your child? Do you think that's safe for your child? But he also would be parenting your child completely without your supervision in the case of a divorce. So there are so many complicated layers to this. But I do think it is important to not just completely write somebody off because they voted against the way that you voted, but at the same time, having a very good understanding about why they made that decision when it seems against type for who they were to begin with, which I feel like we're now kind of getting into circular logic here.
At the end of the day, unfortunately, you have a child with this person. So unless what they're doing rises to the level of getting custody taken away, and even then, and that's a very high bar to clear, too high in my opinion, and also very subjective and kind of at the whims of the court, and that involves a very long and protracted and acrimonious legal process. You are going to have to co-parent with this person. You are going to have to coexist with this person. So I would practically start contingency planning as if you may have to divorce. I would be much more aggressive about your own personal finances. I would try to find as much information as you possibly can about what the divorce laws are in your state, what, you know, the...
So this will psychologically put them 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I genuinely don't think you can be on someone's team and be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So then there's this question of how is she ever going to actually repair or have a relationship with her husband if she's also looking to escape from him? Have we gotten to the point in the marriage where you feel like you have to escape from this marriage? Or is there a point when you're like, hey, I think we've deviated far enough that we need to sit down and go to counseling or this is over? See, so there's a dilemma here where I could never, ever be in a relationship with my partner where I had a secret bank account or was thinking about leaving and feel like I'm really invested in the relationship. And to be honest, in all my other relationships in which I lived with partners or were dating partners, I was always 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I want to make that abundantly clear, that I made it abundantly clear to all my partners when we talked about kids, marriage, that I love you, I want to be with you. I was always 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I always told them, I am not going to marry you as you are. So I always have a contingency plan to leave you. I am not committed to you. I'm committed to this relationship so as insofar as we are attempting to become the partners for one another, but I am not interested in dating the version of you right now. Like, I'm not interested in that person. Okay? So I was always honest with my partners, but we were also saying, I love you, looking at wedding venues, names for kids, what our life could look like. We were doing all of it at the same time, but I have never committed myself to somebody in that way. I've been committed in terms of like, you know, no infidelity. I've been committed in terms of not lying or being with my partner, but I've always been 1 foot out, 1 foot in. This is the first time that I've been fully in. And once you're fully in, this is why I say people are getting married 1 foot out. She might think she was always fully in, but how are you fully in and you don't know how your partner voted for Trump? For me, when I say fully in, I mean fully invested in the consciousness that I'm with. I want to know what you're thinking. How are you feeling? What do you think about the election? How did we get, again, to one of the most contentious elections of our time and you are blindsided? Did he lie to you? Did you never have the conversation? What was happening leading up to this? So I do think there's differences in how we engage in this conversation, right? And how we have, you know, how we hold ourselves accountable for our genuine, like, did we have blinders on, right? Without victimizing or blaming ourselves, right? Chat says, geez, having a kid with a bigot means you are potentially raising a bigot. Well, and I just want to point it out that a lot of really great people came from bigoted homes. I think I'm one of them. That conservative MAGA bigots create some really great people and also create a lot of really ill-informed adults who become pretty bad people. But I would have a hope that even though you're bigoted, that you would hopefully raise your kid well enough for your kid to be able to say, though my parent was bigoted, I love them and they had good intentions, but here's how I hold my parent accountable and break a generational curse. You know, I would say my brother is raising some pretty great kids, and though he's raising them in religious Catholicism, which means that it's bigoted, that those kids will have access to their gay auntie and they'll have access to less bigoted people who will then give them the option of thinking of the world a different way, right? And so I think what's really important here is that we recognize kids are born every day to bigoted people, because most people are born prejudiced and bigoted because they were raised by bigots, because we are products of the world. So, you know, I have hope that a lot of us will deconstruct our bigotry, our prejudice, that we will face ourselves and recognize that not all kids born into these places are lost causes, because then we certainly would be one ourselves, but that they are products of their environment as much as anybody else. And unless they do the work, then sure. Right? They're going to end up just being parrots of their parents. You know what I mean? Chet says raising a kid with bigotry is definitely harming your child as someone raised in that. Well, of course it's harming the child, but it doesn't mean the child is hopeless. Of course it's harmful, right? But that's the problem, is like, of course it's harmful, but that doesn't mean that like the child is hopeless. And that's what I want to move away from, that framing of like bigots raise other bigots. Yeah, but also they raise that child's potential is not only bigotry. They also have a potential of being non-bigots by deconstructing the bigotry they were raised in, right? RL, thank you so much for the super chats today, guys. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate it. You said, I'm not saying to watch it today or even at all, but it was a really good video titled Enemies Project Transgender. Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you for the suggestion. Also, if you guys are patrons and on the Discord, you can also leave suggestion for the stream on the channel we have there. It says like suggestions for stream. Okay, thank you for that.
The settlement, you would likely be looking at the spousal support, the alimony, all of these things. If you can maybe talk to a lawyer to ask them questions, I would advise you to do that, because these are often very nuanced things. I would very much start planning, have a plan B in place. But for so many reasons, I would not recommend that you just rip the cord and say we're divorcing, not until you've gotten all your ducks in a row, not until you know the extent of the problem, not until you know how rational the person you're going to have to deal with is. Because again, if we're talking about you have a kid. Is this one of these people who's gone down the rabbit hole where they're no longer giving their kids the MMR vaccine? There's a lot of questions at play here. So
I mean, that is happening. RFK Jr. just announced that healthy mothers and children are no longer required to get the COVID vaccine and like all these other things, right? Chad says, I'm not in the Discord. It's members only, right? It is members only, the Discord. I'm just saying that one of the perks of being a member is that I prioritize your video suggestions. That's one of the perks of being members on the Discord. Okay. Chad says, is it possible to be a completely bigotless human, or is it a lifelong journey? Yes, because bigotry isn't prejudice. Like, bigotry is different. I think you absolutely don't have to be bigoted to be prejudiced. But I think if you're bigoted, you're also prejudiced. And if you're prejudiced, you're just a person. Everyone has a prejudice that they're constantly deconstructing. But I really don't think you're necessarily bigoted. Bigoted is a very black and white belief. It comes from a very specific construct, and I think it's very specific. You know, being a bigot is very different from just being a human who experiences prejudice, right? Like, I have a prejudice towards a direction, or I have a ill feeling that I have to deconstruct when I have it when I'm around certain people, you know, or like I have this thing. But bigotry is a belief inherent to the objectification and devaluing of a certain group or concept or idea, right? So yeah, I think that to answer your question.
Oh, I'm very sorry that you're dealing with this, but just please know that you are so not alone, that this is not just an American problem, a global problem. And I feel strongly that the people in my life who don't have to deal with this on some level are increasingly the exception rather than the norm. And again, this is across the board. So don't feel ashamed. Don't feel isolated. Find support systems online, and really just try to remember that you didn't make a mistake here. You married who you married. People change, unfortunately, you know, and, you know, don't beat yourself up about it.
Yeah. Like, realistically, it's not that she made a mistake, but I really, really, really encourage people to talk to their partners. I really, really, really encourage parents to talk to their kids. You know, parents would be like, I don't know how my kid ended up this way. You don't talk to your kid, bro. Or friends will be like, man, you've changed over the years. We don't talk, bro. We're not talking. You're not getting updates about me. You know what I mean? Like, even as a content creator, if you watch a video of mine from 8 months ago, it's probably outdated. You've got to watch current Britney to know current Britney's thoughts. I change, bro. I'm literally growing every day. Every day that I grow, today I could say opinion and tomorrow I could change my mind. Like, I change with new information. I change with new data. You've got to get updated. That's why. Have you guys noticed why I give a benefit of the doubt to people and I go back to check their content to see like, hey, I wonder if they've changed? Because I don't assume they're the same person they've been for 20 years. That's why I go back to watch people's current content to see if they're any different. And when I find out they haven't changed, I just go, okay, yeah, a lot of people don't change. It's kind of exceptional to change. It's kind of exceptional to be a different person. It's kind of exceptional to grow. Even though nobody's inherently exceptional compared to somebody else, it might feel exceptional because everyone around you might feel stagnant. But this is also where we outgrow friends, outgrow relationships, you know what I'm saying? Okay, so she's not a bad person for marrying somebody. But I think one of the greatest ways we can prevent harm is to make sure we actually are in our life, actually living our life and in the now and in the present and saying, like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? What do you think about this? Can you tell us about what do you think about the election? I just can't believe it. I cannot understand a situation where you're blindsided that your partner voted for Trump. I just can't. It just like, I cannot see that scenario happening unless you are literally not talking to your partner, which at that point, like, yeah, no wonder everyone's ending up in a divorce. They're not talking to their partners. They don't know who they married.
I'd hit the pause button on having another kid for now, but
Yes. You have to determine from kind of a safety perspective if you feel that you could go speak to a divorce lawyer just to collect information. If you don't feel like you can do that, at least having a very good understanding of what your state divorce law is. You don't have a prenup, so your state's laws are what will decree how things go in your divorce. But also I would double check depending on the, I'm going to just say, type of state you live in. Is there anything working its way through the courts that maybe could change what divorce law looks like, maybe makes things more favorable for men, less favorable for women? How do your rights look in your state? And having a little bit of understanding around that as well as a protection measure in a lot of this conversation.
very sorry you're dealing
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me finish this.
with this. It's terrible. Okay.
So that's the end. Really interesting conversation. You first have to see where you're at, but I think it's crazy that she's getting advice from a content creator before a therapist. So just FYI, the person this woman should have gone to was a couples therapist. That's my recommendation. If you're having this serious of an issue in your marriage, you need to be talking to a couples therapist. Okay? That's my final recommendation. I love asking YouTubers stuff. I love that you guys ask me stuff. But just for the record, if it's this serious, then we should be talking to a couples therapist. And then, I understand they came to Chelsea for a financial perspective, but yeah, there's something to be said about the seriousness of this needs a professional, right?